This is Work University, episode 33. This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I interview people from various employment backgrounds and get the inside scoop on what their job is really like. If you're just getting into the workforce, or if you're curious about getting into something new, listen up. Hello. Today I am here with Judge Sergio Tapia. And Sergio Tapia is a judge of the Superior Court of California. Thank you for joining me so much today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So what does a judge do?
Well, a judge basically decides based on the law and what is reasonable, and I pretty much do that. I currently preside in a criminal courtroom, generally over felony matters. I hear pretrials, I do jury trials. In the past, I've heard preliminary hearings. I do other types of evidentiary hearings. In my current position, I also have certain administrative duties and supervising duties. So I work with the supervising judge of our criminal division to set policy for the entire criminal division and help administrate the court, at least with respect to the criminal division. That is sort of a brief summary of what I do.
So do you spend most of your time in the courtroom every day, or are there only certain days out of the week that you're in the courtroom?
I'm generally in court every day because my duties right now are split between court and administration. I spend about half my time in court and half my time doing administrative functions. Prior to this assignment, however, I pretty much spent all day in court every day. That has only changed with respect to it pretty much just being half days now.
Now, when you're in court, anybody walking in can see that you're sitting at the stand. But once you get off the court and you're back in your office, what are the administrative things that you do that we don't know about?
Wow, well, it's a number of things. So we have to, when I say we, I work in tandem with the supervising judge of the criminal division. I'm the assistant supervising judge. And what we have to do is look at all of the laws that have been passed in the preceding year. And we basically do summaries of all the new laws. And we have to make determinations as to our staffing, the way cases are going to get processed, the way cases will get divvied up amongst courtrooms, amongst other judges. And also we give guidance to judges on changes in the law. We also give them guidance with respect to procedures and other types of policies. We also have to manage the different bench officers that we have in terms of where they're assigned, the types of cases they hear. And while it doesn't change that often, it is something that we're always working on and trying to plan ahead to decide how to best manage our courtrooms. On an individual basis, back in chambers, I'm having to decide a variety of different issues with respect to the cases that are in front of me. I get motions filed all the time, which I have to read. I have to research. I have to try to foresee many of the issues that come up in the cases that are before me. So a significant amount of time is spent just researching the law and trying to apply it to the different cases that come before me. So my day outside of the courtroom can be just as busy, if not busier, than my time in the courtroom.
So if you get a case, is it usually the day of, or do you get time to prepare for it, or does it vary with case to case?
Well, the way cases are distributed in Los Angeles County, every courtroom has a set of cases just assigned to the courtroom. And a lot of it just depends on the particular courtroom and the types of cases that are heard. But sometimes it's also related to the bench officer. So in my case, I have basically a regular, what we would call calendar, where I hear all felony matters from the point where an information is filed, which is like a complaint, to the point that it gets sent out for trial. So everything up to the trial, I hear. So that could be motions to suppress, motions to dismiss based on insufficient evidence, the discovery motions. It could be a variety of different motions. And I also have to schedule the matters. So I have every courtroom has a bank of cases, I am no different. I have a bank of cases, and it varies by day, but the way we distribute the workload in the criminal division in Los Angeles County, we try to distribute them equally amongst all of the criminal trial courts.
Now, with all of the administrative things that you have to do you have a team working with you, or are you a manager of the bench officers? Do you have any say in who hires the bailiff or the court reporter or anything like that? Is that another management position of yours as well?
No. When it comes to staff, professional staff, like the bailiff, the clerk, which we call the judicial assistant, and the court reporter, those are functions of our administrative side, staffing side. So judges are not involved at all in personnel issues related to staff. Now, we may make requests to have certain judicial assistants or certain court reporters assigned to us, but in terms of hiring, firing, and disciplining employees, that is not something that judges do. There is a bright line between staff and judges. We do not get involved in any personnel issues related to staff, and vice versa. They don't get involved with respect to judges and whether assigned or anything like that.
Okay. Now, shifting gears here, did you always know that you wanted to be a judge?
Actually, no, I didn't. Prior to becoming a judge, I spent the bulk of my career as a criminal defense attorney and all of it as a public defender. And I grew up as an attorney in a political environment where it was not very common for criminal defense lawyers, public defenders, to become judges. Here in the state of California, if you go back 25 years, the political environment was such that politicians were very much focused on being tough on crime, on imposing really harsh sentences. And politically, it wasn't something that was convenient for, in this case, a governor who appoints judges to appoint criminal defense attorneys as judges, because it was perceived as though they were not being tough on crime. Now, you would get them every once in a while, but it just wasn't very common. It was much more common to have former prosecutors appointed as judges. So when I was a lawyer and I chose to practice criminal defense work, I knew in my mind that career as a judge probably wasn't in the cards. Having said that, about 12 years ago, the mood started to change in our state and in our county. And it was around 2008 when Governor Jerry Brown was elected that he made it a point to try to diversify the judiciary, not just with respect to race and gender and ethnicity, but also with respect to background of the lawyers that were being appointed. So it was at that point that I saw individuals that came from my line of work getting appointed, and that's what really got me to think, well, you know what, maybe a career as a judge is possible. And that's when I really started to think about it as an option. Prior to that, it wasn't something I thought of. It wasn't something that I considered when I went to law school, because number one, I didn't know anybody who was a judge, and frankly, when I went to law school, I didn't know anybody who was a lawyer either. So the mere fact that I was a lawyer in my family, for me personally, was a big deal.
Yeah.
To think of anything beyond that really never entered into the equation until later on in my career.
So after you went to school to be a lawyer, and then once you decide and that you're taking the position to be a judge, is there any additional schooling or training or anything that you have to do to get through to before you get on the stand?
Well, there are minimum requirements you have to meet. For instance, here in the state of California, in order to be a Superior Court trial judge, you have to meet certain minimum requirements. You had to have been a lawyer for at least 10 years. So anyone who hasn't been a lawyer for 10 years doesn't meet the minimum qualifications. Then there's a process. I went through an appointment process where I filed an application with the governor's office. So then there is a series of vetting procedures done at multiple levels, and they're looking into your background. They're looking to see whether you're honest, whether you're someone who's dependable, reliable, and they look at a variety of other things. So in terms of getting to the bench, that's the process I followed. And then once you get an appointment, because that's the process I followed, was the appointment process. there is another process, which is just to try to get elected. Either way, once you become a judge, either through appointment or election, there are required trainings that you have to go to, which are dictated by the California rules of court and the law. So, for instance, every new judge in California is required within the first 2 years of either being appointed or elected of going to what we call judicial college, which is 2 weeks of intensive training. Everybody's required to also attend 1 week of new judge orientation, which is really just focused on ethics. And then there's another required training, which we call primary assignment training. So depending on the discipline in which you preside, so for me it was criminal law, I had to go to a 1 week training devoted to just criminal law. So there are a variety of different trainings you are required to attend. But having said all of that, you pretty much go straight in the courtroom from the moment that you begin the job.
Wow.
You're expected to, at a minimum, understand the law and how to look at the law. But the court and at the state level, the Judicial Council, I think they make great efforts to try to make sure that every person who starts the job is given the tools to be successful, which includes these required trainings.
Now, looking back at getting there and, when you're giving advice to those who want to become a judge, were there any bumps in the road along the way that you didn't anticipate, going through law school, being a lawyer, and then to the position you're in now? Is there anything that maybe, or any advice that you would give to students or those wanting to consider this as a career?
Well, I think the first thing anyone who's thinking about a career in the law should do is to be very open-minded about the type of lawyer they would like to be and where they want that career to take them. And I say that because when I started law school, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't know any lawyers. In fact, I came from a household where no one had ever gone to college. So it was a big deal that I graduated from college. Going to law school was a big deal. Obstacles were not having mentors, not having examples to follow, but that could be remedied. And that's the other thing that I would recommend that people do is that people need to ask for help. I happen to be Latino and first generation college graduate, first generation here in the United States. And there's this, what I find in talking to students and young lawyers, and even some of my colleagues, there's this sense that, we can all make it on our own. And the reality is that we would be far more successful, far quicker, if we were more comfortable asking for help, finding people to mentor us, not being afraid to ask for advice, for counsel. So that's the number 2 thing that I would do is 1, be open-minded, 2, ask for help, and 3, I think that a career as a judge, for example, is something that you need to think about early on. I was very fortunate. As I mentioned, when I went through the appointment process, there's a lot of vetting that goes on where they look into your background. I was very fortunate that I conducted myself well as an attorney. I believe I had established a really good reputation so that when they went through my background and they were looking to see the type of lawyer I was and the type of judge I would be, they felt comfortable. The governor's office felt comfortable appointing me. But I think that anybody who's thinking about this today really needs to consider that. And they need to, from the very beginning, think about how they conduct themselves in their practice, how they conduct themselves with their colleagues, with staff, with clients, with judges, with opposing counsel. Because you never know what you might want to do in the future. And the relationships you develop early on, and more importantly, the reputation that you establish goes a long way in determining whether or not you will be picked to be a judge in the future. So those would be the 3 things that I would advise people.
Okay. Being open-minded, getting advice from others, and knowing early on and planning ahead. Are there any opportunities or programs for students to job shadow or mentor with judges directly, or do they need to go through the lawyer route first?
No, I think that there are a variety of different opportunities, and I can recommend that people should look to their local bar associations, including and especially local affinity bar associations. And what do I mean by that? So in LA County and in the state of California, you have the State Bar of California. In LA County, you have the Los Angeles County Bar Association, which provides different types of opportunities to learn and to explore the legal career. But then you have specialty bars like the Mexican American Bar Association, the Langston Bar Association, which focuses on African Americans, the Women Lawyers of Los Angeles. In Los Angeles County, we have about 38 different affinity bar associations, and they provide a lot of targeted programming to help students and young lawyers find their niche. So that would be what I would recommend, is to look to your local bar associations for these opportunities. And there are also other nonprofit organizations that assist young individuals and students explore this as a potential career. For instance, I work with a nonprofit that mentors students to consider law school. And they go through this process where they have programming every week. They have lawyers come in and talk to them. They have judges come in and talk to them. They have other individuals in the legal profession come and talk to them to try to get them to think about what a career in the law would look like and to help them along the way.
At what age are they starting to think about this?
Well, believe it or not, some of the people that I work with target students as early on as elementary school.
Wow.
And you have to start planting the seed with children that young, because they need to start to see that as a potential profession early on.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, what do they see? They see careers that they see on television, maybe stuff that they read about on the internet. But until they actually get to experience conversations with actual lawyers or judges, it's really difficult for even young children to see this as a potential career. So right. I think it's something that has to happen early. For instance, if you go to the Judicial Council website, Judicial Council of California, there's an entire section devoted to all of the programming the Judicial Council does to try to mentor young people and children in a career in the law.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience. It's going to help so many people, and I just want to thank you for agreeing to talk to me today. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked this episode. If you have a particular job you'd like me to look into, send me an email at workuniversityforyou@gmail.com. That's workuniversity, the number 4, the letter U, @gmail.com.